Hey everybody! Welcome to CAF Warbird Tube, the show where we talk about World War II, aviation, history, and so much more. Warbird Tube is produced by the Commemorative Air Force, the world's largest flying museum. Our mission is to educate, inspire, and honor through flight and living history experiences. The CAF began the Warbird movement more than 65 years ago, and thanks to the support of individuals like you, we continue to grow strong. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and now our host, Steve Buss. Thanks for watching and keep 'em flying.
Good evening and welcome everyone. This is episode 125 of Warbird Tube. Tonight we take a look at a new aircraft in the CAF fleet, the C-47 Texas Zephyr. Before we get started though, please do us a favor. If you haven't already done so, take a second to like, share, or subscribe and follow us. If you do subscribe on YouTube, also click the bell icon to get notifications about new episodes of Warbird Tube when they are posted. Now, as you're watching tonight, you might have some questions for our guests. Just type those in the comments section. We'll save time at the end to answer those questions before we sign off. So joining me now from the Highland Lakes hangar in Burnet, Texas, is Unit Leader Kirk Noaker.
All right, everybody, here we are. We're at Burnet Municipal Airport. For those of you that have been following along, you know that this is arrival day for the Texas Zephyr. In fact, we're looking at her. I'm going to try to zoom in. This is the Zephyr's very first flight in many, many years, just coming out of restoration. As I'm looking, it looks like maybe I can see that the landing gear is down. A C-47B-35-DK Texas Zephyr. We got wheels on the ground, folks. Welcome home, Texas Zephyr, to the Highland Lakes Squadron, part of the Commemorative Air Force. Boy, she's coming. I can see a big, thick layer of dust on that airplane. Engines sound great. She looks beautiful. Well, here we are at the tail of our C-47DC-3. This is the Texas Zephyr. And when we got this plane donated to us, we were excited. We wanted to dig into the history of this airplane. And of course, during this broadcast, you'll hear so much about the history of the Zephyr, which is a newer name, or KP-224, which is the designator from its RCAF time. Benoit will talk about that. But as a squadron, we want to know, how do we tap into the history and how can we maximize that for promotion, to generate interest and buzz and support here at the Highland Lakes Squadron. And as we looked into the U.S. Army, the U.S. Air Force of our United States, the U.S. history of this airplane during World War II and beyond, we came up with very little. In fact, much of this airplane service history was with the Royal Canadian Air Force. So as we talked about it internally here at the squadron, we decided, let's embrace that Canadian heritage of this airplane. And, during this broadcast, you'll hear so much about it, but we're excited about it. So as we're looking at the C-47 here, we want to actually mark this airplane Royal Canadian Air Force. We want to put RCAF colors on this airplane. We want to identify a paint scheme that really represents what this airplane did so many years ago, 50, 60, 70 years ago. I know for a significant part of the history of this airplane, this was a rescue aircraft. Perhaps we don those markings on here. But, it was just a really interesting, in fact, it was kind of an aha moment by one of our squadron members here. But, we're like, gosh, this plane just doesn't have a lot of American history. And somebody said, why do we need American history? Let's go ahead and embrace the Canadian history of this aircraft. And I am so excited that we're doing this. We got Benoit, who is an associate historian with the RCAF, talking about the history and a partnership between us and the Royal Canadian Air Force on trying to get this airplane celebrated in the history to where this plane represents RCAF history. To us, what a great honor and a great position to be in.
Hi from Sheldrake, Quebec, Canada. You are probably asking yourself why a French-speaking Canadian in this webcast. I am Associate Royal Canadian Air Force historian. I have a particular interest in the C-47, having a few years ago the pleasure to be part of the plane saver restoration team led by Mikey McBrien. I will address with you the history of Texas Zephyr, spanning 34 years, supporting Canadian troops in Europe and Canada, repatriating war wounded, flying numerous search and rescue missions from one ocean to another, a testimony to the versatility and the endurance of the C-47. Texas Zephyr was built in Oklahoma City and delivered to the U.S. Army Air Force on June 7, 1945. Her exact model is C-47B-DK-35. She was transferred 3 days later to the Royal Air Force in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Her Royal Air Force registration was Kilo Papa 224, as written by an unknown hand inside her fuselage skin. She flew to the United Kingdom with the Royal Air Force Ferry Command on June 18. Her first affectation lasted only 1 month, with the Royal Air Force 77 Squadron starting on August 29th. She was transferred to the 436 Canadian Squadron from September 29. The squadron, which operated during the Second World War mainly in Burma, was relocated to the United Kingdom shortly before. She flew missions across Europe from the UK to Belgium, the Netherlands and Denmark, mainly carrying freight and mail. In March 1946, the aircraft was sold to the Government of Canada. Operated now by the Royal Canadian Air Force, she kept her Royal Air Force serial. She was initially stored in Mossbank, Saskatchewan, and moved to the No. 10 Repair Depot on May 26, 1948. She flew transport missions starting March 23, 1949 with the 414th Photographic Squadron based in Rockcliffe, Ontario. Transferred to the 435 Transport Squadron in October 1950, she flew mainly transport and troop-carrying missions. One mission, particularly significant, took place from February 8 to 12, 1952. She carried several flights to move Korean war wounded from Tacoma, Washington, to hospitals across Canada. She moved to the 4th Operational Training Unit in Dorval, Quebec, the following month. Transferred to the 102 Communication and Rescue Unit on November 27, 1956, her designation changed to Dakota Mk.IV East Air for Search and Rescue this year. She was based successively in Trenton, Goose Bay, and Whitehorse until February 14, 1958, when she was transferred briefly to the 111 communication flight in Winnipeg, Manitoba. The Royal Canadian Air Force Dakota, dedicated to search and rescue role, is identical to the Dakota Freighter with a few changes. 2 lookout positions, one on each side of the fuselage after the wing trailing edge, are provided. These positions are equipped with lookout blisters which offer a wide angle of vision, including vertical view. Other modes are fixed fitting for 2 bottle jato installation and the capacity to be fit with ski. Operating from the East Coast to the West Coast with several units, she was moved to storage for 6 months starting June 26, 1967, and went back to her search and rescue role in January 1968. The same year, the Royal Canadian Navy, the Royal Canadian Air Force, and the Canadian Army merged to form the Canadian Forces. With this new structure, a new serial system for aircraft was instituted. Kilo Papa 224 became Canadian Armed Force 12905. She left the Air Search and Rescue role in February 1972, moving to the 429 Squadron in Winnipeg. Placed a last time in storage on September 27, 1974, she was sold to Eclipse Aviation Consultant in June 1976. She briefly wore the registration Golf 2-time Juliet Fox. Her next and last Canadian registration was Golf Sierra Charlie Bravo. She flew successively for Skycraft Air Transport and briefly for several operators: Wildwood Airlines, 2 months, BC Packers, and Transprovincial Airlines until 1981, when she was sold to Air BC, which flew her until 1983. The same year, she moved back to Skycraft. At this time, several errors were introduced in her certificate of registration: wrong year of manufacture and wrong serial number. Her Canadian registration was cancelled in 1993 after her export to the USA. I hope perhaps one day to see her back flying in the Canadian sky if you have the opportunity to go to do a tour up north. Hope to see you there.
Hello, I'm Mark Davis, lead mechanic of the Highland Lakes Squadron of the Commemorative Air Force in Burnet, Texas. I'm here to talk about our C-47, the Texas Zephyr. So we are a 30-plus-year-old CAF unit that has a long history of operating the C-47 type airplane. So in the fall of 2019, Mr. Carl Ritter of Fredericksburg, Texas, graciously approached us to donate his C-47 to our unit. So we gladly accepted his generous donation and set to work to get her flying again. Sadly, Mr. Ritter passed away in December of 2019. So his gift of the Texas Zephyr to us will allow his prized airplane to live on and to help us fulfill our mission to educate, inspire, and honor. When the Texas Zephyr was donated to us, it was located in Brady, Texas, which is about a 1.5-hour drive from our base in Burnet, Texas. The airplane had not flown in many years at this point. And in 2020, we started the long process to bring the Texas Zephyr back to airworthy status. I should also note that we started this process right at the beginning of COVID, so this added to the challenge. So as time permitted, our team of dedicated volunteers would drive up to Brady and work on her. As we started on the engines and propellers, both propellers were in good shape but needed to be removed for the engine removals, and also we needed some periodic inspections on the propellers. The left engine was removed and taken back to Burnet for tear down and repair. So the right engine was too far gone, so it was decided to get an overhaul. The left engine arrived in Burnet. We removed all 14 cylinders for overhaul, and in the end we decided to also overhaul the power section of the engine as well. So once this was done, the engine was reassembled and prepared for installation after a ground run. This was completed in the summer of 2022. And also in the background, all the engine accessories, the carburetors, the fuel pumps, generators, etc. were overhauled as well. So it was determined that we would not get our overhauled engine back in time for the right side when we needed it. So the Central Texas wing of the CAF graciously loaned us a spare engine to allow us to ferry the Texas Zephyr back to Burnet. So in the fall of 2022, we started to install both engines and propellers. After engines and propellers were installed, we needed to thoroughly inspect the entire airplane. There were a number of issues that needed addressing, but nothing too significant. So it took us until the spring of 2023 to complete all the work, the inspections, the ground testing, and have the airplane ready to move to Burnet. So on May 21st, the Texas Zephyr flew back to Burnet. This was the first time this airplane flew in about 6 years, I believe. So now we have the airplane back in Burnet. We're addressing a number of minor squawks, and we just received our new overhauled engine from the shop. So the next step is to remove the borrowed engine and install our new one. So once the new engine is installed, the next steps are to do cosmetic work and to start flying her. I would like to thank the Ritter family for their father's gift to us and for their continued support through this long process. And I would also like to thank the tireless Highland Lakes Squadron volunteers who were instrumental in getting this project completed. They are the heart and soul of this organization, and without them, none of this would be possible. I also want to thank Central Texas Wing in San Marcos, Texas, and particularly Ray Clausen. Without their help and support, Texas Zephyr would still be in Brady, a long way from flying. Thank you.
Just like to talk briefly about some of the differences between a DC-3, which this aircraft is based on, and this actual aircraft as a C-47. This aircraft is technically listed with the FAA as a DC-3 in civilian use. That's, the FAA required that. She came out of the factory in Oklahoma City at Tinker Air Force Base as a C-47. The C stands for cargo, and the 47, I'm not real sure, it's just the 47th model or something like that. Not sure what it is. The main differences between the normal DC-3 and the C-47 is the C-47 is a DC-3 somewhat on steroids. She has heavy-duty landing gear, heavier duty than the DC-3 does. It has a heavy-duty floor in it for carrying heavy-duty cargo. You can actually drive a Jeep up inside this aircraft and not have a problem with the floor. And then, of course, we have to get the Jeep inside the aircraft. You have to use this cargo door here that opens up down the side of it and gives it a lot more room to get stuff in. And we will go to those things individually. Parts, 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 parts. Have you got parts? That's the thing we're always looking for, is the parts. These aircraft are beautiful old aircraft and they run marvelously, but the parts were made a long time ago, and finding a part number that matches to something today is sometimes difficult. They will change the, you go look, I'm looking for a part that the part number that is on the part simply does not come up on any searches that I've done on the internet, and it's driving me insane. Not only when we're working on aircraft that are 80 to 150 miles away from home base, where all our tools and stuff are, we try to carry everything we need or think we need, but most of the time we get over there, there's always something, that one thing, that one tool that you just can't live without, you can't work without. It's back at the home base, so anything. And we do have a maintenance manual that we use to go by. This is written, I don't know the exact date on this one, but they're old manuals and they go by, and it's a lot of fun working with them, because sometimes they assume that everybody of the older generation, when they say to do something, they know how to do it. Some of us newer generation, and I'm not very new, but some of the newer generation don't know what they're talking about when they say to do something. So that's always a challenge. But we have had quite a lot of work, and the people going over to Brady and getting everything done over there in the heat and the cold and everything. It's been a real challenge, but we were able to get it done, and we brought the plane back over here just this year, and we're continuing maintenance on it, and we will be getting it up in the air for a lot of events we have coming up. Okay, talking about the cargo door that we just mentioned, this is a picture of the cargo door here. You can see it opens up quite large and allows for moving a lot of equipment into and out of the space. Pretty easy to get it in and out of the aircraft. It's pretty lightweight. It looks like it's heavy, but I'll show you it's pretty lightweight. I can, one finger lifts it up and shuts it, and it will shut all the way. I would like to also show you that the paratrooper door, that's going to be the small one in the front over here. A lot of people wondered, this aircraft is the aircraft that took the soldiers over on D-Day, the paratroopers in on D-Day. And a lot of people wonder how they jumped out of the aircraft. And I'll give you a little demonstration of how that door operates over there. And this one is a small door. This is known as the passenger door. Okay, this is known as the passenger door, and it shuts when when they shut together, they come all the way and close together. But for the paratrooper deal, they closed them, and then you can see right here, there's a plug in here that you can remove that plug. After you shut the door, you remove the plug to the inside, and you can store it on the inside. And that is where the paratroopers jumped out of. Okay, I'll give you a little brief description of the inside of the aircraft here. Right now, I am standing in the navigator compartment of the C-47. This particular one, there's supposed to be a wall right here, but that's been taken out for carrying cargo, and we're in the process of getting it restored. We'll have to get this restored. But so this is a navigator compartment right here, and right up here is a hole that's been patched where they had an astrodome for the navigator to get out. He had the luxury of sitting on a little three-legged stool, and that was his way he sat down to work on his maps and stuff like that. But he could, when he stood up, he could move that stool over to here and set up and climb up and look and use the sextant to take shots, navigation shots out the astrodome up here. So that came in pretty handy. Now I've stepped over. Now I'm standing in the radio compartment, radioman's compartment, and he actually had a chair to sit in, but he had all his radio equipment and everything here that he needed to work on. And when we get the new wall in, it'll be a lot smaller area in here. And backing up just a little bit, I talked about the paratroopers jumping out of that door back there. This is what's known as an anchor line, and they put this in, and this is what the paratroopers would attach their static line on their parachute to, and they would give the standard call from the jump master would be stand up and hook up, and they would do that, and then when they were all done, he would ask them to sound off, and the guy behind you would check your equipment and make sure it was all ready to go and ready to jump, not twisted up to catch anything. And then I don't know who checked the last guy in the line. He had to turn around, somebody had to check him. And then the jump master would tell them to stand in the door, and they'd all go down, about 18 guys, and they would all, or 23 guys, and they would all walk down, and the first guy in line would get in the doorway, and the jump master standing just aft of him, and would give him the command to jump. And he would go out there, and it would take about 18 seconds, I've been told, take 18 seconds to get 23 paratroopers out the door. They run. The only one of them that gets a choice in the matter is the last guy in the line. He actually had a choice, because everybody else in the line, if you balk at the door, if you slow up at the door, the guy behind you is going to push you out. You're not going to have a choice, and so you're going to go. But the last guy, he has a little bit of a choice until the jump master pushes him out. So that would be a good deal on that. Okay, just want to give you a quick picture. This is the C-47 radio operator's chair that would go in this compartment. I don't think you can probably pick this up too much, but this is a picture of the radio compartment in there. And so, like I say, earlier on I told you he had the luxury of a chair. Well, actually, I told you the navigator had the luxury of a stool. But this is the radio operator's chair, and this is the way the seat belts work on this one. And that goes like that. And you put it in like that, and lock it down. And that is a fairly good lock right there. You're not going to go anywhere. Normally, you also have the option of there's some other belts that would go in this. You had shoulder straps, and they would come down, and you would put them. They would just slice on here, and then you would put it in like that. So when you did it, your shoulder straps and you actually had a crotch belt that came up through the middle between your legs, and all those would come loose with one flip. Okay, just wanted to take a quick moment to point out this picture is a painting that was done by the gentleman who was flying this aircraft during World War II. He was with the RCAF 436 Squadron. Zephyr was briefly in the 436 Squadron for about a day and then given to the 435 Squadron. And anyway, this guy is a member of the Veterans Association up in Canada, and so he painted this, and I got in touch with him and he sent me this picture. So that was pretty impressive. I was really impressed about that. These guys are carrying a load of bricks to somewhere, and they saw this Japanese aircraft that appeared to be have run out of gas or something and beached itself, and they were throwing bricks out of the C-47 to try to hit the Japanese aircraft and destroy it. I don't remember if they were successful or not, but they were giving it their best effort. I just wanted to say a couple of words about some of the people that have been helping us to get this airplane over here. It has been a monumental task. It has taken about 5 years to get it done, and I can't say enough about the people. They're great people. We've had a crew from Burnet that's been going over different times, depending on what was available that we could work on. But it's about 80 miles over to Brady from Burnet and a round trip, so you're looking at about 3 hours worth of driving time round trip. And the people that are from Syntex over at San Marcos that were just a godsend for the work that needed to be done, they were making a 150-mile one-way trip, so they were going 300 miles round trip, and they did just a ton of work over there. And the joy of it is during the summer, the hangar that we worked in was unair conditioned, and you got to work in extremely hot temperatures and extremely dusty atmosphere also. So it was a challenge, and the people really stepped forward and stuff. They have a real commitment, and they have a dedication to and responsibility to recognize these aircraft and the people who flew them during World War II, and to take care of them and keep it so that the upcoming generations can see what these people did, what they worked with, and everything.
I'm standing before several air show pictures that we've had here at the Highland Lakes Squadron, and next March will be our 32nd annual Blue Bonnet Air Show that takes place here in Burnet, Texas. In fact, the date is March 16th. And another reason to be so excited for the Highland Lakes Squadron is that the last several years we haven't been able to have our own airplanes participate in our own air show. In fact, when you have air shows, you know, it's a great opportunity for you to feature your treasured and historical aircraft. We just haven't been able to do that. So come March 16th of 2024, my vision at this point is that the Texas Zephyr, or whatever the airplane will be called then, will open the air show with our jumpers, and that is just so historical here at the Highland Lakes Squadron, because as a C-47 squadron for many years we've always used our own aircraft to provide the jump plane to open up the air show, and we haven't been able to do that for about the last 5 or 6 years. So I'm really excited to see the Zephyr up in the sky, that beautiful polished aluminum frame of the airplane, that outer skin, and the jumpers opening up the air show. But of course, there's so many other reasons that we can be excited. With us having flying airplanes, now we'll see our SNJ in the air show, perhaps our Navion in the air show. We take a great deal of pride in putting on a big time production of an air show for little old Burnet, Texas. I'm not sure what the population is here in Burnet, but I think it might be somewhere around 5,000 or 6,000 people. But yet we put on an air show that rivals any mid to major metropolitan area. We secure a DoD team for several years. It's always been the A-10 Thunderbolt demonstration team. The A-10 to me is just a perfect air show airplane because it goes low and slow, has that great sound when it shoots its cannon up front. The A-10 draws a lot of people. In fact, in the last 3 years of the Blue Bonnet Air Show, Well, 3 years ago, we set a record attendance for our event at 4,100 plus people. And then the year after that, we broke that record at 5,600 people. And then this year, the 2023 Bluebonnet Air Show, which took place back in March, we brought out, I believe the number was around 4,700 people. And that was 4,700 people with some really crappy weather. We had, I think the temperatures were in the low 50s, but yet people came to support the Bluebonnet Air Show, to see some great airplanes. And ultimately what this does is this is our major fundraiser for the year for the Highland Lakes Squadron. And it's really that air show that keeps us afloat. So we have so much to be excited for. 2024, March 16th, mark your calendars. Make sure you come to Burnet, Texas, not only to see that A-10 demonstration team, but to see the Texas Zephyr fly and several of our other airplanes hopefully perform in that air show as well.
Well, that's a pretty extensive history and walk around of the C-47 Texas Zephyr. Now it's up to you. What questions do you have for our guests? Stand by as we go to our live Q&A session. Good to have you all here. And yes, thank you for sharing your expertise on the airplane and some of its a little bit of its history. I guess one of the things that that Mark touched on was the Ritter family, and that's the family that donated the airplane to the Highland Lakes Squadron. And tell us a little bit about that process. How did that happen?
Okay, I guess I'll jump in on this. So first, it's Ritter is the family. We were in the market. We were looking for a C-47, and at the same time, Mr. Ritter was looking to. He wanted his airplane to fly, basically. So he had this airplane, but flying one of these airplanes requires a significant amount of maintenance. And he really had one person working on it part-time, and it was just never going to get there. And so it was kind of a synergy thing here, where he wanted the airplane to fly, and we had the people, but we didn't have the airplane. So we had the people and the skill set. So it was kind of a very fortunate that he was close enough. I mean, because this airplane could have been in California or something, and that would have been a whole different ballgame. So the fact that an hour and a half away was challenging, but nothing like what it could have been. So it was really very fortunate to us that this airplane became available at the same time that we needed it. So.
That's at the heart of the CAF. It's always magical when you can marry an airplane and a donor and a unit together, and especially this. Like you said, obviously the unit has DC-3 and C-47 expertise, and this airplane was just waiting for a good home, and I'm so glad that it got to come home to you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. We are thrilled.
Yeah, Steve. What made it so special also is that. Mr. Ritter's family kind of followed along in this process with us. In fact, they had a few family members in Brady when the Zephyr took off to come to Burnet, and I invited them to join us in this broadcast this evening. So, I look, this is great for the Highland Lakes Squadron, but I know in my heart of hearts that this is very special and rewarding for the Ritter family as well.
Very good, very good. You mentioned briefly earlier about putting this back into the Royal Canadian Air Force colors. That's sort of a departure from what we normally see with CAF aircraft. How is that process going so far? I mean, I know you're still in the preliminary stages of what you might do with the airplane, but you must have had some talks about color schemes and things like that.
Yeah, we have. In fact, as we prepared for this broadcast, we got together with Benoit, who obviously has tons of information, not only on our particular airplane, but the RCAF in general. And as we all got together and discussed what could the future look like for this airplane, we seem to be landing on, let's embrace that Canadian heritage. In fact, it's Mark Davis this evening that we're in the hangar one day, and it was just, why don't we do this? And then we all kind of paused and thought about it and realized, hey, this makes a lot of sense. So we're excited about what that could look like. We don't know exactly what this will, what will transpire in the days and weeks and months ahead, but we look forward to getting together with Benoit and other resources in Canada and come up with some ideas. But, my goodness, if, to me, making this airplane look like some of the images that we just saw in this broadcast, with that rescue on the side and that big stripe around the tail of the airplane. To me, it's beautiful, but I'm an airplane nerd, but it's a beautiful looking plane. And I picture that plane sitting on the ramp next to other airplanes. And I think people are going to gravitate towards that really shiny, colorful, beautiful plane that's not even from the United, well, I mean, it was manufactured in the United States, but it's marked with Canadian colors and markings. And to me, that's really thrilling.
And that was something we were talking about before the broadcast, is that with an airplane of that size, obviously the best way to make money is through the living history historical flights, but also getting invited to air shows and having that happen. And really, if you were to go that way and painted in the Royal Canadian Air Force, there's a lot of C-47s, DC-3s out there, and the olive drab with the invasion stripes that look great. But this one definitely, as you just mentioned, Kurt, would stand out on the ramp from any other aircraft that was there.
Yeah, maybe Benoit can speak to it a little bit. But Benoit, if I recall, I don't know if there are any flying C-47s that, will have been marked with the RCAF markings. Could you explain that a little bit more?
Right now, there is with Canadian Warplane Heritage, they have one DC-3 marked as a C-47 and one C-47 with very, very long history too, but this aircraft is in World War II marking, so olive drab, like many other C-47. It will be really a first to have this aircraft with Royal Canadian Air Force colors, with the bright search and rescue scheme, which is really, really beautiful. And it will really pop up on the apron, as you say. It will be really looking good. And next year, it's the 100th anniversary for the Royal Canadian Air Force. So I'm sure that if you want to come here, you will be really, very, very welcome.
I would imagine so. Benoit, well, we have you on mic. One of our viewers is asking, when did the C-47 emerge from Canada's Crown Assets program? Do you remember when that was?
Crown Assets program, it was mainly in 45, 46, and for this particular aircraft, it was sold exactly, I think it was around 46 that she was sold to Canadian government. So, okay. But all aircraft from Crown Assets were sold around this time. It was at the same time that all aircraft, basically, when you think about C-47, you don't think mandatory about Canada. Sorry, but it's what is happening is that just after the war, Canada booked all inventory from Oklahoma City, from Douglas, and brings them to Montreal to convert C-47 to DC-3. So this is why there is a long history about C-47. There are more than 250 C-47s that serve with Royal Canadian Air Force. There are a lot of C-47 DC-3 that are flying, that flew in Canada and are still flying today, for example, with Buffalo Airways. So there is really I will not say a long tradition, but this is really a long history, long association between this, the C-47, the DC-3, and Canada in general.
Yes. And of course, those of us down here in the States very familiar with Buffalo Airways and their distinctive paint scheme. It's quite a fleet of aircraft that they operate in Canada. Ed, as we're talking about, possibly seeing this airplane go back into the RCAF colors and in the search and rescue, one of the you talked about parts, right? In your segment, one of the parts you might be tasked with trying to find or manufacture would be those viewing blisters that are quite unique to this airplane.
Yeah, I was going to lean on Benoit a lot on that and say, come up with them up there in Canada. I think they're very, very unique and probably not too difficult to install. I wouldn't think Mark could address that, but they would add a very distinctive look to the aircraft, I think. And maybe Benoit could also show us some. He has beautiful pictures, wonderful pictures that I have not seen before. Maybe he's got some pictures of the interior of how a Canadian search and rescue C-47 was laid out and what equipment it had inside. That would be nice to actually kind of lay it out a little bit. We serve kind of a dual purpose, though. We would like to set it up, that type of interior, but at the same time, I'm thinking we probably would like to also be able to take static line jumpers up and let them go out. That'd be something we'd discuss. So we'd have to have that equipment also aboard and set up. So we sometimes have to kind of meld two things together there and push them together.
In fact, you don't have to meld them because C-47 for search and rescue has the static line. Because it was some people who jump and it was not possible to share the content because this is some copyrighted material, but there is some video with one search and rescue mission and people jumping from the aircraft over the wilderness and helping people on the ground. So it was used at the time, so both the static line and the blister and all the particular installation. So you can imagine I'm not sure that you are going to install the Jato rocket, but it will be a nice addition too.
There we go. Mark, that's great. Put the Jato rockets back on there. That'll be nice.
Yeah, I don't want to imagine the FAA paperwork for that one.
I don't even want to think about it. I don't think. Mark, do you, as working on maintenance, are there really any major differences between C-47s and DC-3s? I mean, obviously the C-47, the floor is reinforced, the doors are different, but mechanically, are there any differences really?
Yeah, so I think the specific of your question is, so technically they're all DC-3s according to the FAA, but manufactured as a DC-3 versus manufactured. Systems-wise, I don't think so. The landing gear is different. Oh. So the easiest way to tell externally if an airplane was a DC-3 or C-47 is the landing gear is beefier. I mean, I can't describe it, but you know when you see it.
Okay.
But the landing gear is definitely different between a 3 and a built C-47. Now there's, if you go to Wikipedia, you can look up DC-3, and under the military, there's like 15 different versions. Right. And it's just, there's some of them that were like 2 airplanes that were ex-Eastern Airlines that they converted to military use, and that'll have its own number. So there's a bunch of those different ones, and those can vary between, different configurations. Sure. But if you look at just a pure DC-3 and a C-47 purpose-built, the biggest difference would be the landing gear. Externally, internally, the floor, the structure is different, cargo door. I think there should be provisions to put parapacks on there, so cargo packs that can be dropped. And I think there may even be a hardware to put floats on there too.
Yeah, and of course the rigging for towing gliders as well.
Yes,
would be on a C-47. Yeah.
I think if you go into it real quickly, the listings I've seen, I've been told that there were like 600 to 650 DC-3s built, and all the rest of them were some version of a C-47. So there's about 10,000, over 10,000 C-47s and 650 true DC-3s.
Yeah. And the Highland Lakes Squadron, do you work with other DC-3 C-47 operators to exchange information and?
Yeah, I mean, intel? we work a lot. We work a lot, mostly with Syntex. And so it's interesting when they acquired Tab, they got a beautiful airplane, probably the best example of World War II, the C-47 you're ever going to see. But what they didn't have is experience operating one. So initially we gave them a lot of help. In fact, I went to Normandy and crew chiefed the airplane for them, or helped crew chief the airplane, because they needed that extra experience. But they have paid us back in spades with their help getting this airplane going. So we collaborated the most, I think, with Syntex. There is the R4D up in Dallas, but we don't really, I guess it's far enough away, and we've kind of focused on the Syntex side.
And the plan is to keep the Texas Zephyr, or whatever it might become in the future, that's going to be housed at the Highland Lakes Squadron, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Good. You're going to keep her right there in Burnet, Texas.
Yeah, we're not letting her go, Steve.
And we're going to farm Mark out to Syntex to go to Normandy too.
There you go. Yeah, that's true. That's returning next year as well. That trip across the ocean.
If we're going to talk about trips, though, real quick, let me just get in that, with next year being the 100th anniversary of the RCAF, we have this very ambitious vision that maybe we can get our plane on some type of a tour in Canada, and if we can mark her up, within the financial, abilities that we have, but get this plane marked up, we pull off the American military markings of the Zephyr, and maybe we mark her up with RCAF, and maybe we use some vinyl decals, and of course we'll work with Benoit on that. But let's get this plane marked up. Maybe we can take her around Canada a little bit. The purpose would be maybe we could raise some funds for the airplane and actually get this airplane marked properly, painted. That'd be super exciting for us. So yeah, Normandy would be great, and that'd be a wonderful long-term vision. But if we have a short-term vision and it's still ambitious, maybe we can take this plane up north somewhere.
Good. We've got a couple of minutes left, and I think we've answered all the questions that our audience had. So just want to go around the horn. Start with you, Benoit. Any final thoughts about the airplane or its future?
Yes, perhaps. Probably first, regarding the tour in Canada, what I can tell you is that the Commemorative Air Force has made several tours in the past with Sentimental Journée, Fifi, another B-25, I don't remember her name, but it was always a success. I can tell you that you are moving code. Really, people are coming to see the aircraft, and it's really there is a huge interest for them. So if you come up with a Royal Canadian aircraft, it will be marvelous. And perhaps something else, in fact, regarding all markings, there is a blister, which is, but perhaps another part that will be to look for is the Astrodome that you notified, Ed. To have the Astrodome back on the aircraft could be a nice addition too, because it was really used at the time, and it's really characteristic of them. And perhaps one little thing regarding your painting that you have shown just before, it was confirmed. It was the only kill made by a C-47, I believe, during the World War II, made so this brick, they went directly to the seaplane. It was a success. I can confirm it to you. The story is well known.
Very good.
My assistant just joined me here.
Yeah, see that. Ed, what are you envisioning in the near future and maybe long term for your role with the Texas Zephyr?
Well, just work right now and hoping for cool weather to get out there and do some stuff. We got to pull that engine off and give it back to Syntex and do that sort of stuff and get her ready to get going. I would like to bring up a little bit sort of a general DC-3 or C-47 stuff, that just a little historical note. This plane, we do have inside it, we do have an autograph in two places of Dick Cole that he was been on this aircraft. He took a ride on it back in 2014, July 3rd, I believe, and he autographed the aircraft. And some people who may not know who Dick Cole is need to go look him up. But of course, he was the co-pilot for the Doolittle raid, and but a lot of people don't know that once he got to China, the en route of the attack, everybody else in the group mostly came home, and he stayed in China and flew the hump in C-47s. And I believe I've heard that he actually has more time flying a C-47 than he does flying a B-25. Of course, everybody knows him for the B-25.
That is true, and we've been lucky enough to talk to Mr. Cole in years past, and
Wonderful guy.
Although he was extremely proud of his role in the Doolittle raid, he was equally as proud as of his service flying the hump, and thought that was the way he felt his contribution was much better in the China, Burma, India theater than it had been with the Doolittle raid.
Yeah.
Quite a man. Quite a
He was great man. And at over 90 years old, you shook his hand. You came out with your hand kind of like this. I mean, he had a monster grip when he was 90 years old. I don't know where he got it, but he had it.
Mark, how about you?
A couple quick thoughts. I guess the first thing is to inform everyone that doesn't know. So CAF, we're all volunteers, and I think a lot of people have this concept that you have to be a pilot or mechanic or ex-military or something like that. And no, we need volunteers of all stripes. We need accountants, we need mechanics, we need people to do lots of different things. So
museum work.
Museum work. So, if you're interested in doing, in our mission, come visit us, come visit another CAF unit. They're all over the country and some parts of the world. So, we encourage, volunteers is what makes this thing happen. And the other thing, I wanted to thank the city of Burnet for basically being our host for the past 30 plus years. Without, the facilities that they provide, we wouldn't be able to do this.
Definitely. Kurt, we'll wrap up with you. You're the unit leader, so you get all the tough questions at the end. You've got about 100 members that are in the unit, and probably, member to aircraft. You're probably one of the more, you've got more airplanes than most units your size does. So how do you keep all of that together?
Yeah, it is tough. It's a challenge, and it really comes down on some of those members who have a lot of time to spend at the hangar, and some of those specialty positions that every unit needs, right? You need pilots and you need AMPs, and Mark here, he's our lead AMP. He's a former squadron leader here at the Highland Lakes Squadron. In fact, his fingerprints are all over the squadron throughout the last many years. But as Mark said, and I just want to echo that, I am not a pilot of CAF aircraft. I am not a mechanic. I'm a guy who just loves aviation, and the more that I do this, I buy into the aviation history and World War II and everything that we represent in the Commemorative Air Force. And there's a lot of other people that have that same interest who don't necessarily have a skill set that they think is expected of them. At the Highland Lakes Squadron, we put on all kinds of events that aren't necessarily events where we fly airplanes. We have a Pumpkins and Paratroopers annual event, and it's wildly popular in the city of Burnet. We get about 1,000+ people. HEB, a significant grocery chain here in South Texas and Central Texas, they donate several hundred pumpkins to us, and the kids come. We have parachuters that are on the ground, living history. We'll have some old wartime vehicles positioned around. It's a fun event. And we don't need specialty positions to make these events happen. We have a wine and wings event. This year, we'll be doing a Christmas event with Santa and the C-47. So as we look at all these activities and as we look at creative ways to engage the community, to promote the mission of the CAF and, of course, the objectives of the Highland Lakes Squadron, we need people. So we welcome inquiries from anybody who has an interest in joining the Highland Lakes Squadron. And there's all kinds of perks to doing it, right? Because everybody that's on this broadcast right now or that's watching this, well, they're watching it for a reason, because in some way or the other, we dig airplanes. And if you dig airplanes, then make sure that you're affiliated with the CAF unit and see what you can do to get up and close and personal with airplanes. Get in these airplanes and go for a ride. We have a very successful ride program at the Highland Lakes Squadron that generates a little bit of revenue for the squadron, and that's important. But also what's important is when you get that family who says, my grandfather, flew in this airplane back in the early 50s or late 40s, and he's always wanted to fly in it again. And we get them there, and I'm running the camera, and we're getting pictures and video, and it's really moving to see not only the person that's going for the ride, but the family members that have dreamt about doing something like this for such a long time. One of our members, gentleman's name is Jerry. I think he's 91 or 92 years old. He got to go up in our S&J the other day, and just to see the excitement on his face, and he was so happy to get up in that airplane. It was really moving to all of us. So this is what the CAF is. We're a big family, and we all share a passion.
Excellent. If someone wants more information about the squadron, and also equally important, if they've got some C-47 DC-3 parts to help Ed out, or would like to make a donation to help the restoration, how can they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I would encourage you to go online and go to the Highland Lakes Squadron.com. And we also have the BlueBonnetAirShow.com. And if you're on social media, you can find us at the Highland Lakes Squadron on Facebook and Blue Bonnet Air Show on Facebook. And that's the best way to get in touch with us and stay on top of everything that we're working on at any given time.
Excellent. Well, gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. We appreciate you sharing a little insight into the Texas Zephyr with us, and we look forward to what the future holds for this nice airplane.
Thanks, Steve.
And remember, if you have suggestions or feedback on this show or any of our shows, please send Leah Block an email at media@cafhq.org. Again, thank you for joining us online here tonight. We appreciate you tuning in every Wednesday night for another episode of CAF Warbird Tube. I'm Steve Bush. Thank you for watching. Have a good night.